C'est chaud, c'est chaud, c'est chaud. Hi! Hello, I'm Miley. Welcome to my channel. I feel like at this point, so many of my videos start with a montage of me making tea that it might just become a thing. Welcome to my channel. This is my face. I am Miley. This is my face. This is my no makeup face.
Face. This is face. This is no makeup face.
Jamin? Yes. Anyways, so today I thought I would just do a little chatty video, kind of casual. I'm kind of feeling the Nicole Raffi vibes. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Nikki Nasty. Yeah, I really like her videos and I just like her vibes overall. So that is the energy that we are channeling in the studio today. I thought that for this little chatty video, we could relive some of my trauma. Today, I thought I would tell you, I think I'm gonna do 2 of my worst IB/high school nightmare stories and then give you the lessons that I learned from those. Let's get into it, shall we? So my first story. This takes place senior year of high school, actually only a few months before COVID. I was in standard level IB literature. So that's my English class. It's kind of not really important. My English teacher was preparing us for what's called an IOP. So I believe that stands for an individual oral presentation. Basically, we were studying a bunch of poems and we'd spent maybe like 2 or 3 months preparing for this IOP. Basically what happens in an IOP is that you go into a room and there's a bunch of folders with a bunch of texts that you have talked about in class and studied previously, and you're just going to have to pick one at random, and you get, I think, 15 minutes to sit and annotate and kind of regurgitate everything that you memorized and learned in class. And then you have to go into the next room with your teacher and you talk and analyze that poem or text out loud to them for like 8 minutes. So if that wasn't nerve-wracking enough, there was a schedule and we were allowed to be pulled out of class for this because this was an official IB assessment. So there was a whole schedule and she had one column with the time that you needed to be there to start your analysis and then the time at which your oral presentation would start. So basically it was 2 columns with 2 sets of times and they were 15 minutes apart. And so she specifically told us, you know, this column is when you actually have to get to the room in which you're going to be analyzing your poem. This other time is kind of irrelevant, but that's just when you're going to start talking to me. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just like put down my time slot and set an alarm for it and like not think about it until the day that I need to think about what time that I need to be there. The day arrives. It's the end of bio class and I excuse myself from class. I leave my backpack in there with my bio teacher. All I take with me is a pen as instructed and I show up and I'm sitting there. They have these chairs set up outside of the room and I'm sitting in a chair. I'm waiting and the proctor comes out and she looks at me and she says, "You're here. You're late." And I was like, what is she talking about? No way. I set the time during that class when my time period was assigned to me. I set the time that was on the board. You know, I'm here on time. Because my teacher did tell us if you were late, you were not going to be able to sit your IOP. You know, this is your time slot, you have to be there. And she takes me into the room where my teacher is, and my teacher is sitting, let me set the scene for you. There's this big room, right? And it's dark and she kind of made it a little cozy with a little lamp on a desk and a plant that she brought because she didn't want us to feel as stressed out while we were doing our presentation. So she's sitting in the corner of a dark room with a little lamp and she looks up at me and she says, what happened? Where were you? You're late. You missed your time slot. And I am at the door on the other side of the room and all of the blood leaves my body. I literally died for a second. The look on her face of just pure disappointment. I was terrified. And she looks at me and she goes, "I specifically told you, make sure you set your alarm for the time at which you start your analysis. You have just arrived at the time at which you start your presentation." I am shaking, literally shaking. This is an official IB assessment and I just screwed up and missed my time slot. And I'm like, this, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? I like couldn't even talk. I was just so panicked, I didn't know what to do. And so she's looking through her papers, and she had an extra time slot later in the day, and she said, you can take Daniel's time slot, but make sure that you're here on time. And so I just said, okay, wrote down the time and turned around and left the room. So I start walking down the hall, and I'm still shaking and I'm still pale. I assume I'm pale. I can't see myself right. I'm still shaking down the hall, and then I just start running because I'm about to start crying and I can't be caught in the hallways crying. I'm running through the hall through these middle schoolers trying not to cry as I just open the door to the counseling office and go straight to my counselor's room, and I just like see some of my classmates, people from my graduating year, sitting there in the office, and they're like looking at me, like staring at me as I stand in my counselor's doorway and I say, hi, I screwed up. And then as I go to close the door, I just start bawling. Crying all over I just couldn't hold it in anymore. And I'm sure you understand the feeling, because I was just so overwhelmed by the fact that I disappointed my favorite English teacher and screwed up and missed the time slot of my official IB assessment. Obviously, the universe had it that I was able to then take my classmates' time slot later in the day, which I was so thankful for. Thank you, Daniel, for not being in the country. And just out of pure luck, I ended up randomly choosing one of my favorite poems. And so I ended up doing pretty well in my presentation, which I'm so thankful for. The lesson that I learned from that very unfortunate event is that you should always check and double check the time and schedule of any really important meeting that you have, whether that be school related or not. I am obsessed with putting the exact time in my calendar, and I have now become obsessed with being really punctual for a lot of meetings and things like that. So if you have a meeting with me, I will be there on time. Obviously, unless there is something keeping me from being on time, like traffic. That's a Manila thing. I can't control the traffic, but I will do my very best to be exactly on time. Yeah, that's still hot. Okay, my next story, my second story. Now we're gonna go and we're gonna talk about chemistry. In high school, I've said this before, I took higher level chemistry. So I took the hardest level of chemistry offered by the IB. I am by no means a great chemistry student. I try my best and I studied quite hard, but on this particular occasion, I took a test and I got a 3. So I'm not ashamed to admit it. Now I have my IB degree. I am going to college. So I will tell you that on this test, I got a 3. And so if you're unfamiliar with the IB grade scale, it's from 1 to 7, 1 being you did not do anything, 5 being like a B, or like even close to an A, and then a 7 is like an A++ star, A star if you're British. So I took the test and I actually didn't think it went all that bad, which to me tends to be a bad sign. If I take a test and I think it went really well, I am automatically scared because I feel that I'm too confident in what happened and the universe is about to take me down a notch. And so in this case, I was indeed taken down 3 notches, 3 notches. As per my school's policy, if you got a 3, you have to resit the test because it's just not acceptable. When you resit a test, there is a slip that you have to get signed by your parents. I don't know why they make us do this. We are high school students. I was a 12th grade student. I was 17 going on 18, and they still wanted my parents to sign a slip to tell them that I'm resitting a test. I would have resat the test regardless of whether or not my parents knew. I would have studied my butt off and resat that test. And so I had a week to get that slip signed and given to my teacher. As the week progresses, I'm realizing that I do not want to tell my parents that I got a 3 on my test. Now I think about it and I'm like, I don't know what I was scared of. But then I was absolutely horrified. I was gonna get yelled at, I was gonna get punished, I was gonna get my phone taken away from me or my computer taken away from me, or I was not gonna be able to go outside or go to sports trainings or see my friends. I don't know. I thought that my parents would see my test and take one of these disciplinary actions on me. And so I go to my teacher and I said, "Miss, I am terrified, absolutely mortified to show my parents this test score. Is there any way I can sit the test without having them sign the paper?" And she said, "You know, I understand that, but unfortunately you cannot resit this test unless you get it signed." So I had no choice. And so she was very gracious. She knew that I was going to resit the test. So she said, "I'll just give you until the day before the test to hand in the paper." So I would get more time to think of how I was going to tell my parents that I had failed a test. I'd never failed a test in my life. Let's get this straight. I'd gotten mediocre grades, but I never failed a test in my life. The night before the day I'm supposed to hand in the paper, I am in bed and I just cannot sleep the entire night. Or if I did happen to doze off, it was just very uncomfortable. I woke up to the alarm at 6 a.m. the next day and I had gotten no sleep and I was shaking because I knew that today I had to get that paper signed and turn it in to my teacher. So I'm getting ready and I'm shaking, quivering like a leaf the entire time that I'm getting ready, and I have the paper in my hand and I have my backpack and I'm going downstairs to eat breakfast with my parents, and I get into the dining room and I'm standing in the doorway of our dining room because our dining room has a door. So I'm standing in the doorway and I'm like quivering, shaking, like literally like, ah! You know, my parents are both sitting there. My brother hadn't come down yet. My parents are both sitting there eating, checking their emails, drinking their coffee, and I'm standing there and I just can't say anything. They're like, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" You know, and I just cry. Cry! Common theme in all of my IB trauma. So I'm standing there holding this piece of paper, crying in the doorway, shaking like a leaf, and my parents are like, "Oh my god, what happened to her?" And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I haven't slept all night, I haven't eaten properly in 2 days, I can't do this anymore, I need you to sign this paper, I'm resitting a chemistry test tomorrow because I failed my test. They're like quiet, right? And they're looking at me. And I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for my dad to stand up and be like, "What the heck is this?" Or like my mom being like, "Why? How could you fail a test?" You know, I'm just mortified. I'm waiting. And I was stressed. I was standing there what felt like ages. I just wanted the floor to swallow me, right? Classic. And then my parents are like, "Okay, you failed the test. Can we see the test? Give me the paper, I'll sign it." And that was it. And then I blew my nose, sat down and ate breakfast, went to school, handed in the paper, and took the test the next day. I also learned that grades may seem really important in that moment, but in the long run, they don't really matter. So, like I said when I started this story, I have my degree. I have my high school degree, and I'm going to college, and so I'm no longer ashamed to say that I got a 3 on a chem test. It happens to the best of us. Up until that point, I'd never failed a test, right? And I think every student at some point is bound to fail a test. It was just as long as you learn from that and study harder and do better next time, you know? So those are my IB trauma stories and the lessons that I learned from them. I made tea, but I actually wasn't able to drink it because it is still super hot. Actually, it's okay right now, which is good because I'm parched. I've been talking for a while. Anyways, that was my tea time. Those were my IB trauma stories. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you liked seeing my face, go ahead and subscribe. Times are tough right now. School can be super hard. Corona is just making everyone stressed out. Situations are less than ideal, but you know what? Stick to it. You can get through it. Just keep going. I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.